Hi knitters, it's Louise from Wildflower Wool and welcome back to my channel. This is the second video in our series on how to double knit. This is where we left off after video 1. I showed you how to do the long tail, two color long tail cast on. And this is how our stitches are set up on the needle. We have alternating colors. I have a blue, a white, a blue and a white all the way across my row. I have already pulled out the slip knot because, as you can remember from the first video, we didn't count that slip knot in our stitch count and it's not going to be knit. So if it's still sitting there on your needle, that's fine. Just remember, as you work across the first row, when you get to that slip knot, you're just going to slide it off your needle and just pull the tail and let it pop out. So what we're going to cover in this video is 2 topics. We're going to talk about how to keep our edge stitches neat and tidy and how to keep the work closed. And we're going to talk about how to work the body of our fabric, just talking about knitting one color on one side and the second color on the other. We're not going to get into the color change yet. We'll save that for the next video. So let's jump right into those edge stitches. Because we're working a double layer of fabric, we're working both sides at the same time as we knit across the stitches on our needle. To keep our edge stitches nice and tidy and to keep them closed. See how this is just like a regular edge of a normal knit fabric. There's no gaps there. It's nice and closed. But you can tell down here, right there, I did not twist my yarns properly on this row, which left both sides of my fabric totally open. So for this little project, obviously we're going to want our sides totally closed. So I'm going to show you how we twist those yarns to get that nice closed edge. So when we look at our stitches on our needle, my blue is the first stitch on my needle. That means that what I have facing me right now is going to be the blue side of my work. And the side that is facing you is always going to be knit stitches, because as we work across our work, we're going to be working a knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 pattern. So I know when I pull up my needle here and get ready to work, I know I'm going to be knitting with my blue yarn. I have a blue stitch. I'm going to keep my colors the same, so it is going to be worked with blue yarn. So my blue is my working yarn, and for this very first stitch, the white will be my non-working yarn. I want to make sure that I bring my non-working yarn over top of my working color. So see how my non-working color is coming over top? And if we look at it from this side, the non-working color is coming over top. I want to hold my white. I just like to cross it over top of my yarn and just hold it like this in front of my work and just give everything a little tug to make sure it's nice and snug and tidy. And because this is my blue side, the side facing me is always knit. My blue, I hold in my right hand and I knit that stitch. Now the yarn I had holding at front, I'm going to swing it around, let it drop, and come back to the back of my work. And I pick it up and I hold it in my left hand. I like to work my stitches with one color in each hand. I find it a little faster. And so like I said just a few moments ago, now that we're going to work across, we're going to work the body of our double knitting. Double knitting is always worked in the knit 1, purl 1 pattern. My blue stitch was knit. This means my white is going to be purled. And I'm going to keep that pattern all the way across this row. My blues are going to be knit, my whites are going to be purled. The one thing we have to know when we're doing double knitting is both yarns always move with every stitch. The next stitch is a purl, which means both yarns have to come to the front of our work between our needle tips. Even though I'm only working the white, the blue still has to just come to the front and it just sits. So now I'm going to purl my work and I'm going to wrap and pull it through. My blue is next, which means I'm going to work with my blue yarn, and it's a knit, so both yarns go to the back. I knit my blue stitch with my blue yarn. My next stitch is a white. Both yarns come to the front because our white is going to be purled. And I purl. A blue knit, both yarns go to the back. So the reason we move both of the yarns is because if we don't move the yarn, whatever yarn is left unmoved, it is going to show up on the opposite side of our work. And so you'll have a little blip of color. So on my blue side, I may end up with a little strand of white showing where I don't want it to. So as long as we move both strands, we'll avoid that. So see, I'll go to the back. I've got a blue stitch. I'm going to work with blue yarn. It's a knit, so I'm going to knit it. Bring both yarns to the front. I'm going to purl the white, which means the blue just sits there. And now I'm at the end of my row. I turn it around. Now for obviously, like any project, the first few rows, we've got our tail to contend with, but we're just going to hold it out of the way and take a look at our work. I've got a white stitch as my first stitch, which is telling me that this now is going to be the white side of my fabric, and the blue is going to be the back side. Because we have no right or wrong side in double knitting, those purl sides of both layers of our fabric are tucked in the inside. We don't see, all we see are knit stitches on both sides. So I just will refer to the side that you're looking at as your front side, and the side that is away from you, this side is the back side. So for this row, white is going to be our front side, and we'll see our colors start to change, start to separate out, even once we get a few stitches done on this row. Even now, it looks just like a kind of a mishmash of blue and white alternating. But trust me, once we get a few more stitches done here, and definitely once we get this row finished, we're going to see our colors start to separate into this white side and blue side. And once that happens, it makes your knitting so much easier because you'll just be able to read your work. And even now, if we take a look at our work, you can see this white stitch is a knit, and that blue stitch has a blue purl bump on the bottom of it, telling us that that is a purl stitch. So we are going to just work across our needle now, doing exactly what we see. White, we're going to knit white stitches with white knits. Our blues, we're going to work with blue yarn and we're going to purl. The white, we're going to work with white and knit, and so on all the way across the row. But first, we have to remember that edge stitch. So we got have our yarn separated here, and white is going to be our working yarn because we're going to work that first stitch with white. So blue now is our non-working yarn. So we're going to bring it, get this, we're going to bring the blue over top of the white, and I'm going to bring the blue and just kind of hold it snugly in front and give that white a little snug up. And then just holding the yarns in one hand, I'm going to knit that white. And we're going to let that fall back and swing around to the back of our work and pick up the blue. Now, if you want to hold both the yarns in one hand, that's fine. I prefer just to hold, I like holding one color in each hand. And it may feel awkward at first if this is the first time you've tried holding one color in each hand, but it does get easier with a little bit of practice. So now we have a blue stitch, which means we're going to work with our blue yarn. It's a purl because we can see that purl bump. Both yarns need to come to the front. The white is just going to rest while we purl this stitch with our blue yarn. Both yarns come to the back. Our white is a knit. We use our white yarn and we work that stitch. Both yarns come to the front. We work the blue with our blue yarn and we purl it. And both yarns come to the back. Knit our white. It gets very rhythmic as you're going along. Both yarns come to the back. The blue is just going to rest and I'm just going to work with my white. So even though we've only got partway across the row, you can tell we've got our white side starting to show up. Our white was our first stitch, which gives us the clue that this is going to be our white side of our work, and it's already starting to show. So we've got our blue. We're going to purl that. So if you're knitting along with me, I just want you to just get the rhythm of both yarns moving forward and back and being able to read those stitches of what are knits and purls, and just start to understand that the side that is facing you is the side that you're always going to be knitting, and those purl stitches are the stitches for the back side of your work. Now I'm going to turn it around and look at, there we go. There's our blue side, and sure enough, we have a blue stitch to begin our row with. There is our white side. So for this row, the front side of our work is going to be blue. The back side is going to be white just because it's away from us. Our blue stitch is what we're starting the row with, and it's going to be a knit. And there again, we can see now all of our blue stitches are knits, and our whites have now become the purls. Because we're working, the white is our back color, we're working the inside, the purl side of that back side fabric. And we're just going to keep going. We'll work another row across here. So let's go across, work through this edge stitch again. We have our yarns. Our blue yarn is going to be our working yarn. White is our non-working yarn, so it's going to cross over top of the blue. Just hold it in front. Give that blue a little tug and knit with our blue. Let the white come undone and swing around to the back and pick it up. And now we see our white stitch. There's a white, it's a purl, and it's a purl because it's our back side fabric. We're going to work that. Both yarns come to the back. And we're going to work the blue while the white just sits. Both yarns come to the front. We're going to work a purl stitch. Both yarns go to the back, and we're going to knit a blue. Both yarns come to the front. We've got a purl. We're going to work a purl stitch. It gets very rhythmic, and now we're at a point where we can see very easily what our stitches are, whether they're knits or purls, and this is obviously the blue side. And isn't it fun to be able to knit both these sides at the same time? And we're at the end of our row again. I'm going to work this as a purl. Turn it around, and now we have our white side facing us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull this off the needle. So just say, for whatever reason, we had made a little mistake and we needed to pull our stitches out and pull back a row of our work. It's not as scary as it seems. Oh my goodness, this feels nice and soft and squishy already. And this is also going to demonstrate how we have that 2 layers of fabric. So if we let our stitches separate, look what it does. We actually have, there's our 2 layers of fabric. So if I wanted to pick this back up now, I have to remember how those stitches were sitting on my needle, and they were alternating. So that's how I want to pick them back up. So if I wanted to pull out a row now, I could pick up my strands and I could pull out a row of stitches, and then I'm going to want to pick them up again. So remembering, if this is how I'm holding my yarn, my work, I have the white side facing me, which means that I want to have a white stitch at this end. So which is going to also mean that I'm going to end with a blue on this side. So I'm going to pick up blue, white, blue, white, blue, white, and just work my way across the row, picking up stitches, just making sure I'm alternating the colors. Blue and white. And there they are back on the needle. Now, if you had to unknit a row, if you needed to unknit a few stitches, if you didn't want to pull your whole needle out, unknitting is just the same as with your regular knitting. You'll pick up the stitch underneath and pull it out. But with double knitting, you want to move both of your yarns with you as you're doing that. So I'll pick up. This is a purl, so I'm going to bring both my yarns forward. Pick up that white stitch underneath and pull it out. Swing both yarns to the back. Pick up the blue stitch. So that's fairly easy too. My white purl, pick up the stitch below, pull out the white, and swing them both back. And then if I wanted to carry on now, my blue, because I know you always want to keep your colors consistent however you're holding them. I'm on a blue side. I started with my blue yarn. I hold my blue yarn in my right hand. Now I look at my work. The side that I'm working on is blue. My blues are my knits. And just to double check, if the blues are knits, that means white are purls, and there's a little purl bump of my white stitch, so I know I'm going to swing both yarns forward, and I'm going to purl this stitch. Swing both yarns to the back, and I will just carry on with my work. Now, actually, you know what I'm going to show you right here? Let me backtrack here. Let's pretend right now that I forget to move both of my yarns. I'm going to leave the blue at the back, because sometimes you're going to forget. You're going to revert back to what we know when you're thinking you're working with the white yarn. You're just thinking about moving the white yarn. So see how I've done this incorrectly? I still have my blue yarn at the back. I've forgotten about it. We'll just let that sit there and we'll show you what happens. So now I've purled this one. I'm going to swing it around to the back. Now I'm going to knit the blue stitch, and I do have both my yarns at the back, which is now correct position. And then now let's swing them both to the front and work this end stitch. So now when we turn it around, I can see right now that there is a blue yarn crossing on the outside of our work over top of that white stitch. So let's work to it, and you'll see it a little more clearly once I work the next stitch. So let's look at this edge stitch here. We've got our white side facing us, so we know our whites are going to be knits. So my blue yarn needs to wrap over top of my white, bring it around and hold it snug, give that white a tug, knit the white. We're going to drop the blue, let it come around back to the back of our work. Now both yarns come to the front because I'm going to purl the blue. They go swing to the back. And now look at here, I've got that blue yarn, that strand, but I'm going to pretend that I don't see it. I could very easily fix it right now, but I'm just going to work this stitch just as if I pretended I hadn't seen it. And we're going to work on this blue one. Bring both yarns to the front, and I'm going to purl this. Swing them both to the back. Actually, I'm going to work one more. Okay, let's try this again. There. So now when I look at my work, I can see I've got that blue strand right there. And that is what happens when you don't move both yarns. The yarn that doesn't get moved, it gets caught and shows up on the outside of the work. I think we'll leave it right there for right now. I'll show you how to fix that in the next video. And it's not very hard. It just, it's a pretty easy fix. And that is one of the common mistakes that you will do with your double knitting, but we'll carry on with that in the next video. So for right now, your homework is going to be just to keep working your knits and your purls, one color on one side, one color on the back side, and just get the feel for moving that yarn forward and back and remembering to twist your stitches so you're getting a nice edge stitch. And I will see you in the next video, and I will show you how we're going to unknit and we'll fix that little strand of yarn. So it disappears right back into the center of the work where it should be, and then we'll carry on and we'll also work on color changes in the next video. So good luck and happy knitting!